Yeah, I mean, as I was completing the film, I realized that that the film is a critique of almost everybody in it, including the Dalit leadership. And so I was a bit nervous when I started showing, because we did all our screenings for a long time as soon as the film was made in the community. We put up huge big screens and showed it to thousands of people. But the response from people in the Dalit community was so amazing that what I understood was that it isn't just people like me who feel upset about the selling out in the leadership. The ordinary people are equally upset, if not more. And so they were happy that this was put on record, that these people had been named and shamed. So I think that the movement at its roots is still alive and well, despite what is happening at the top, where the people who, yeah. And that happened to it's happened again, and it happened to the Black Panthers. It happened to, either some people were killed and some people got co-opted and some people. But then there was a new leadership, and you can see in this, you can see a new generation that is taking it up all over again. They are underground. I mean, 2 of them are in jail, and whoever gets caught goes to jail, and so the rest are in hiding. And so we formed a defense committee after the film was made and was shown. The film has been used to actually get support for the movement, and I won an award in India for this film, and I contributed it to the defense committee, and then we've been going forward with that. In fact, in the next couple of days, we're doing a release of their songs on a CD.
Will that be available here in Vancouver?
You won't understand it because it's audio. It's in Marathi, but yes, I will get some copies as soon as the copies are already made. They'll be released on the film. The police officer was convicted, sentenced to life imprisonment, and basically he claimed that he was doing his duty, that he was acting in self-defense, and that was their, that they have the tanker theory that they invented, and that fake video that they made. They placed those tankers there and had a camera shoot the whole thing as if there was a fire behind the tanker. In fact, as you saw in an earlier shot of mine, you see what the fire actually was with the tires that people had set on fire. So they just moved the tires behind the tankers and shot it. And so they created this story, and now, so many years later, the fact of the matter is that it's very rare that police officers actually get punished, because according to the police, it will demoralize them. If you convict a policeman for firing, then no other policeman will ever obey the order to fire. And so that's the logic that they actually have. So all the rest of it is invented. So the High Court case is going on, and I wouldn't have finished. I would have probably have taken more years to complete the film, because I was then waiting for this conviction happened in 2009, and then I was waiting to see what would happen in the High Court. But when the Kabir Kala Manch went underground, then I knew that I had to stop making the film and start showing it, because this is a dangerous situation. When somebody is branded as a Naxalite or a Maoist, they could be killed, because the state has a carte blanche to these people are considered terrorists. What is the war of culture? The war of culture is that you have a Brahminic system. You have a long history, and that's the only story we are told. Like we're told in school and college, and we're told through our religious texts that this is what Hinduism is. That the caste hierarchy. It's not emphasized, but it's very much there. And so that is one culture. And the other culture is the culture of resistance from those who were at the bottom of the ladder. The people, and they have an equally long culture of fighting back. which goes back before the Buddha to someone like Charvak, who was like a materialist many years before Christ. Buddha is also many years before Christ, talking about, in a sense, talking about atheism, not even talking about existence of God. I think even in the Sikh community, Guru Nanak was, again, in the Sikh community also, there's no clear-cut concept of God. It's really of human beings. And so through the Middle Ages, people like Kabir and people carried this working class sentiment against the caste hierarchy. But the sad thing is that even though there were these resistances, then there were also, once the resistance happened, then even in those new religions, the caste system actually didn't go away. So you had people converting, people from the lower caste converted to Islam at one period when the Mughals were in power. They converted to Christianity later when the British came. They converted to Buddhism now. And in Sikhism also, when they converted, that was also against the caste system. But unfortunately, today in Punjab you'd find there are gurdwaras for Dalits, separate gurdwaras, Mazhabi gurdwara. In the Muslim religion also, people remember which caste they came from, and they won't intermarry. In Christian Dalits also the same thing. So the caste seems to be even deeper than religion, in the sense it's almost like a first principle. Well, Maharashtra I focus for two reasons. One is that that's where I live, and so I see everything around me in more detail. But Maharashtra also because Dr. Ambedkar came from Maharashtra. Dr. Ambedkar, who is the spiritual leader of the Dalit movement. Dr. Ambedkar is now obviously all India. He's not respected only in Maharashtra, but everywhere in the country. And what you saw also that every political party now wants to co-opt his image as well, including the right wing. Yeah, and not just the lower classes, but also the left movement. I mean, basically the multinationals, who are the Naxalites, for instance, the Maoists as they're called. There are also people who have been organizing mainly in the forest areas where the indigenous people live. And those areas right now are under attack by multinationals because that's where the minerals are, that's where the ore is, and the corporations want that land, want actually to displace the people from the forest and get at the minerals. And so actually this fight that the state has described as a war on terror, the war against the Maoists, is also a fight for the control of natural resources. It's like Avatar, if you've seen Avatar. The point is that whether you and I like it or not, and I don't like the concept of armed struggle, I think that ultimately people pay a terrible price for that. But the fact is that you can't continue to have such disparity, an increasing disparity. The myth is that India is developing so fast it's going to be another China. But the difference is that the Chinese made a revolution first, and they actually distributed the wealth before they went on this route. Now, if you have India growing in the capitalist direction completely, what's happening is, yes, we have a lot of wealth and we have probably more billionaires than we ever had, and yet the condition of the poor has gotten worse. And the disparity is obviously more and more apparent. So in that situation, how are you going to keep the lid on forever?
On the frustration and the rage.
And so if there's not an organized ideological violence, it can become terrible other kind of violence, crime and just chaos. But poetry has been something that the Dalit movement has used a lot. There was a whole period in the 70s when the Dalit Panthers was not just a political movement, it was also very much a cultural movement, and amazing poetry came out of it. Even though the movement didn't last very long, but the poetry is still there, the literature is still there. And Dalits started writing their autobiographies about what their stories of what had happened to them. And that became a whole genre of literature.
Is there a crossover?
You're saying, are there upper class or upper caste people who join in the struggles of the poor?
Yes.
Yes, of course there are. And I mean, the Naxalite movement has such people, but that creates its own dynamic, and you saw some of that in the film. You saw comrades of different castes and class. You saw the comrade who was speaking in English, and you saw the fact that they actually expelled the guy who was the working caste. I mean, the musician that I began the film with, Vilas Ghogre, was somebody who was a Dalit and from working class, and he was expelled, and the leadership of the left were the people in power. And the film points that out, that the leadership of the left is upper caste. And so there's a long way to go before the left understands what caste is about, or comes to terms with how to actually mobilize. I mean, they might have people from lower caste in their rank and file, but they're not in leadership. And so that's one problem. And then in the Dalit community also there's a lot of anti-communism, there's anti-left ideas, because in some ways there is a dichotomy between Dr. Ambedkar's thinking and the thinking of the left. I mean, in many ways they go parallel. There is a class analysis, there is a rational thinking. At the same time, Dr. Ambedkar believed in non-violence, and he also believed that if you get rid of Hinduism, you need to replace it with another religion, because people are not ready to embrace, well, not just violence, but that they need a spiritual leadership as well, a spiritual idea. And so he chose Buddhism because Buddhism is a philosophy more than a religion. It's not even talking about God. And so it's a very rational religion, so that's what brought him to that. And so you have these conflicts, and you have other conflicts. You have conflict between, say, Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar, which the film sort of, that would be another film by itself, but it sort of points it out. Mahatma Gandhi was somebody who was not a Dalit, was not lower caste, and he also used the Hindu idiom, and he actually believed that his Hinduism was good, and he actually reinvented Hinduism. He actually, in his own mind and the way he propagated, he got rid of a lot of the nasty things in the tradition and focused on, reinvented it to like a liberation theologist does. And so Gandhi, for instance, was one of the earliest politician who actually said, I'm going to clean my own toilet. I'm going to clean my own toilet, but anybody who comes, joins me, will have to do this. He broke the taboo of manual labor, that upper castes are not supposed to do manual labor. And people ridicule him for that, the upper caste, and that's why I kept that bit in this, as the second part of the film begins, the play that describes how and why Gandhi was killed. You know, the guy, they're celebrating the death of Gandhi, that this Hindu nationalist killed Gandhi. And what does he say about Gandhi when he's mocking Gandhi, saying that, I don't clean the toilet. So long before, Gandhi was actually killed ostensibly because he was pro-Muslim, because he was willing to give concessions to the Muslims at the time of partition. And the Hindu fanatics didn't like that. But before that, he already was not liked because he was talking about not decasting in such an open sense, but he was talking about breaking the taboo of manual labor. But Gandhi didn't go, because Gandhi was not lower caste, and this was we're talking about almost 100 years ago now, he didn't go far enough from the point of view of the Dalits. When Gandhi talked about, Gandhi gave the term, instead of untouchability, he said, these are Harijans, these are children of God. But Dalit said, that's patronizing. What do you mean we are children of God? Then who are you? So they prefer the term Dalit, which means the oppressed. So these are contradictions, and then Ambedkar and Gandhi had many differences, including when Ambedkar told the British and got a concession from the British that Dalits would be given separate electorates to safeguard their position in political power. And Gandhi went on a fast unto death against separate electorates because he thought that there should be one man, one vote, and Indian society shouldn't be fractured in separate things that the British usually did. And the British were playing a double game. The British always emphasized differences. I mean, they would, in their army, they would have a Sikh regiment, a Mahar regiment, a Dalit regiment. They would divide according to all these regiments because it was convenient for them, because they had to have very few white people ruling a country which was non-white. So they had to make sure that everybody is divided against each other. So all of those complexities exist. The Dalits are not supposed to be a separate entity in that sense in schools. I mean, the schools are meant to be for everyone. By law, schools are meant to be free and compulsory, mandatory, but society takes a long time. You can change the constitution, you can change the law, but it takes a long time for society to come to terms with it. So caste discrimination still exists. I mean, you still have instances when Dalits are meant to sit separately. They're not meant to be, but that does still happen.
A number of people mention their own illiteracy.
Yeah, the older generation, definitely. The younger generation, not so much. But there's poverty. There's incredible. The Dalits are very often landless. So in the countryside, they're laborers. So, and one of the songs points it out that, yes, we have schools, the school is nearby, but our children are at work. They're already working at an early age. So there are all of those factors that operate. And now recently we passed a new bill for the right to education. And on paper it sounds great. It sounds like right to education. In fact, we already had right to education in the Constitution, in the directive principles. And this new bill is a subtle watering down of what is in the Constitution, because in the new right to education bill, it says that children between the age of 6 and 14 will have a right to education, will go to schools. But that means that they're leaving out 0 to 6. And when you leave out 0 to 6, what that means for the poor is that you're denying the midday meal. Because in government schools, you get fed. And if you deny nutrition from 0 to 6, you're actually responsible for malnutrition, and the brain doesn't form as well as if it had been fed. So you're already, and there's a huge emphasis on privatization of education, so that the rich will go to different schools and the poor will go to different schools. The government schools will be run and are run not very well, and with bad facilities and not enough ratio between teachers and students. And so whoever, even amongst the poor, if somebody, like you saw in the film, this guy who's my friend whom I visited very often, sends his own 2 girls to a better school. I mean, if they made a little money, they wouldn't send them to government school. They would try to send them to an English medium better school. And so that 2-tier education is another subtle way of continuing the caste system, of continuing structured difference. We made a good start because the film got a national award, and that's always my first step, because what happens is with my films is that I have to go through this 2-stage battle. The first stage is to fight to get a censor certificate, because every film that is made has to get approval from the censor board. And sometimes I get stuck at that stage, and then I have to go to court or I have to fight internal battles. But so that stage has been crossed. I don't know if they showed you the film from the beginning, but it's got a censor certificate. Then the next stage also got passed because I wanted. What happens is if one of my films gets a national award of any kind, then I then take it to national TV and say, now you've got to show it, because the government has said this is the best film in the country in whatever category, and so you can't say you don't want to show it, because the government can't say this is a good film, but we don't want to show it. So now I've got this national award, and the next stage will be I've won all my cases so far. I've forced the national TV to show 6 of my films. And this film has won a national award, so I'm going to force them to show it. Eventually, it takes many years in court. It doesn't happen automatically. You'd imagine that if you win one case, there'd be a precedent in the next case. You wouldn't have to fight, but that's not how it goes. You've got to fight each case separately.
And when you reach the stage of the broadcast, is there further interference with content?
No. They can't cut it. They can't change it. But what they do when they get a chance is to slot it wrongly. I mean, they put it late night or something like that. That once or twice I've got court to order that it be shown at prime time. So this is a lesson for any filmmakers here who don't get their film shown on national TV.
Ladies and gentlemen, just due to time restrictions, we have to have this as the last question. However, please feel free to speak to the director downstairs in our lobby. Just one more
Okay,
question.
someone who hasn't asked, yeah. Okay. You've already asked. Anybody who didn't ask? Yes. Go ahead.
One of the things I love about this film, Anand, is...
By the way, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I missed the beginning. I really wanted to introduce the film. But Nettie and Gary were part of our crew. I made a film in Vancouver, believe it or not, 30 years ago. So I made a film on the Canadian farm workers, the birth of the Canadian Farm Workers Union, who are mainly of Sikh origin and some of Chinese origin, and Nettie did sound. Gary worked on the film as well. So nice to have him. Yeah. Because I've been making these kind of films for so long, my films were used by the community long before I started making a film amongst them. So they knew me. And Vilas, for instance, I knew who had already worked on a film in 1983, 85. So my entry was because I was making a film about somebody I already knew and I had worked with, and so there was no problem at all getting access amongst the people.
Is there a point, though, where, for instance, say the mother and the wife and this man who intermarries and has these extraordinary daughters, is there a contradiction in them that you bumped up against, and that there were tough questions to ask of those?
No, not at all. No contradiction between me and them. No. There was no contradiction between me and them, but...
Well, their situation in terms of you filming it. So.
No, not at all. No. They were happy to be filmed, and I was thrilled to find, what I knew existed, but it wasn't easy to find entry to the point where people where it would reveal itself on camera the way it did. So I was lucky to be there when that happened. But my fear was when the film was made, because as I said, I'd attacked everyone. I attacked the Dalit leadership, and they sometimes are powerful. So I knew that if the film had not been liked by the rank and file, by the community itself, then I would have been in trouble. Because who is this upper caste guy making a film calling us names? But the film wasn't seen like that at all, and people did have resistance to it, even by the title of the film. Like Jai Bhim is fine because Jai Bhim means victory. Jai means victory. Bhim is for Dr. Ambedkar. Bhim Rao Ambedkar is the short form. It's lovingly called Bhim by the people. So Jai Bhim means victory to Bhim was fine, but to marry that with Comrade was a different stage, Jai Bhim Comrade. So am I saying that Dr. Ambedkar is a communist? I actually wasn't. I was talking about Vilas Ghogre, the poet, who actually had been a Marxist and then got expelled from the party and died with a blue band on his head, reasserting his Dalit identity rather than his Marxist identity. So it's a critique of the left also. Basically it's a critique of everybody. And but the people accepted it, and they, Dalit community people also said to me that they're glad that somebody from upper caste had made the film, because so-called upper caste, because more people will take it seriously now. It won't be written off as propaganda from the Dalit community. If they had said the same thing, people would have written it off as, that